Nesu was late coming home from work. The girl stood at the front door. She opened it and heard a strange noise in the depths of the flat. Nahu saw, with a sinking heart, the strange woman's shoes at the entrance. On unsteady legs, she went to the source of the moans. Nisu peeked through the doorway and saw her husband with another woman. Nahu woke up from a nightmare. She dreamed her husband cheated on her in their house. Her break's almost over. Time to get back to work. Nesu's boss called out to her like she asked, and he gave her her paycheck up front. Nesu thanked him. The boss really appreciates her as an employee, so he's always happy to help her out. He asked how she was doing on her debts. Had her husband found a job? Nahu thanked the boss and said they were doing well soon. Her husband will get a full-time job and things will be easier for them. The man admonished her not to let her husband sit on her neck. A young girl like her shouldn't have to work from morning till night. Nesu served the tables one by one. She passed a table where a guy was worried about his girlfriend's diet, saying she needed to eat better. Nesu listened and thought about how wonderful it is to be in love, how wonderful it is to be taken care of, just like in the novel. She was thinking that love is beautiful when people are young. Does that mean her life has faded and will never be the same? Nesu listened to her co-worker's indignation at being called an ama. She's still so young, even though she's married. The girl kept insisting that Nahu is very attractive, even though she doesn't wear makeup. She also has a wonderful personality and is a pleasure to work with. After her friend's words, Nahu walked home in a good mood. She was pleased to observe a young and energetic colleague. She thought she was beautiful and secretly envied her. There's nothing beautiful left in Nisu's life. Her husband's always complaining about her. He complains about her appearance and the fact that she is tired all the time. He says he hates coming home to such an unkempt wife. Nesu really hasn't allowed herself to spend extra money in a long time because of her exorbitant debts. She doesn't have time to think about makeup. She thought of their love and life withering away like a dilapidated, moldy basement. Her life is like hard labor, as she has to work to pay off their debts. Her husband told her that the sight of her made him lose his appetite. Nesu was feeling wilted. Nesu's work schedule was terrifying. She has to combine 3 jobs. A co-worker who happened to see her schedule was shocked. Nesu told her to stop wondering and get to work. The girl began to carefully trim the flowers. Then, while arranging the flowers, Nesu thought about the fact that all she had done all her life was work. When she was younger, she worked to make a family life for herself without help from her parents until one day, a terrible thing happened. Her husband, who promised her a trouble-free life, ran up debts in her name and couldn't pay them off. She forgave him and promised that together they'd work it out. Her husband tearfully promised that things would work out, they'd pay off their debts and live happily ever after. Nesu thought that if you worked hard and persevered, everything would be fine. But as time went on, it became harder and harder to hold back the tears. DS continued to grow and love withered. The ringing of the doorbell snapped Nesu out of her thoughts. A handsome young man entered the store. Nesu's co-worker said that he comes every day and buys a bouquet of roses. She volunteered to serve him because she liked him. The girl greeted the young man and asked what kind of bouquet he was interested in. Handsome looked around. After a moment, his gaze stopped on Nesu. Unsuspecting, the girl continued to do her job. Unexpectedly, the young man tapped the counter in front of Nahu. He asked her to take his order. Nahu went to the checkout, bypassing her upset coworker. She thought he was acting pretty weird. Nesu inquired if his order would be a bouquet of roses. A smile played across the boy's face. He said he was glad she remembered his preferences. Nahu was picking up a bouquet and thinking about how in the world there are those who are always the center of attention and those who no one cares about. At first glance, it was clear that this guy is very popular. Nesu thought of herself as unremarkable. When the bouquet was ready, she held it out to the young man. At that moment, she caught herself thinking about him a lot. She couldn't understand why he was so tightly lodged in her head. Her coworker told Nahu that this guy comes exactly on her shift and only wants to be serviced by her. She's sure he likes Nesu. Nesu admitted that she noticed him for the first time. The friend was shocked. How could she have overlooked such a handsome man all this time? Nesu was uncomfortable that she didn't recognize a regular customer. It's not surprising with her work schedule. She was very tired. Her friend kept assuring her that the guy liked her. Nesu thought that a woman like her couldn't be interested in such a handsome man, especially since she was older than him. In response, the friend replied that now it's fashionable to date someone older, and that guy didn't take his eyes off her. At this time, the guy was looking at the bouquet and thinking about how beautiful the girl who gathered it was. Nesu had very low self-esteem, so she didn't believe her friend's words. She wondered how a stranger could compliment her while the man she lives with thinks she's ugly. Her coworker kept encouraging her and saying that they would look good together with that guy. Nesu admitted that she already has a man. She remembered him coming home yesterday without even saying hello. He started demanding food and complaining about how tired he was. He headed straight for the shower, on the way throwing his clothes around. When he came out of the shower, Nisu had already laid down to rest, fed and clean. He lay down beside her. He thought about the fact that despite her appearance, she had a rather attractive figure. Suddenly, he began to kiss her neck and began to cuddle up to her, hinting that he missed her, but Nesu remained motionless. The man tried calling out to her, asking if she was asleep. Nesu replied that she was very tired. Then he started complaining that she was always tired and didn't pay enough attention to him. He got angry and started calling her frigid, said she's being dramatic because of work. Everyone works and is tired, but they have time for their husband. Then he turned his back and went to bed. Nesu exhaled with relief and fell asleep. Nahu mornings always started early, although she doesn't have to go to work so early. She gets up in time to make Mel's breakfast, since he doesn't like to eat the same thing she makes. Fresh food every morning. Then, before she can eat anything, she runs off to work. Regardless, she comes to work with a smile. She changed her clothes and decided she'd hold off on the food until lunch. The ringing of the doorbell announced the arrival of a client. Without taking her eyes off the monitor, Nesu said hello to the customer. When he answered, she looked up and immediately recognized the handsome regular customer. Nesu offered to pick him a bouquet of roses as usual, to which the guy replied yes with a smile. While she was punching the check, she caught herself thinking that only now she noticed what a beautiful voice he had. A low timbre and a polite tone. His voice excited her. She pushed the check towards him. At this moment, Nesu's stomach made a rumbling sound. The guy looked surprised for a second. He reached for the check. Their fingers almost touched. The girl became uncomfortable. She hoped he didn't hear the sound her hungry stomach made. At this time, the guy texted his driver. He sat down in a chair and waited for his order to be placed. After a while, Nasu's coworker spotted a handsome man in the window. He was standing in the street, talking to some man. When he turned around, he looked like a model, sipping a drink through a tube. She thought he was really tall and hot. The girl couldn't stop admiring him. He took his bouquet and left. Nesu noticed that he left his sandwich on the counter. A man was walking down the street when he heard his name being called. Nesu caught up with him and told him he forgot his sandwich. The young man looked at her with interest. He said he bought it for her when he had already turned around. Nahu grabbed him by his jacket. She thanked him and said she couldn't accept it because you don't want to eat it dry. He handed her his cup. I took a sip, so there's definitely no poison in it, the guy said with a chuckle. That charming young man stood and held out his cup to Nahu. Looking at him, she couldn't refuse him. When Nahu came back, she didn't know what to think. Her friend said that the guy really liked her since he bought her a sandwich and gave her his coffee. Jisoo looked at herself in the mirror and saw an exhausted woman with wounds and no makeup. She looked so pitiful that she mistook his actions for pity and charity rather than a show of interest. She looked at the food and thought, what if he was interested in her after all? Then she needs to immediately draw a line between them anyway. It's just her fantasy. So she decided. Her friend couldn't stop saying how lucky Jisoo was to have such a handsome man paying attention to her. She wondered if she was going to pay attention to him, since the coworker didn't know. Nahai-su said she was married. The friend apologized. She didn't know. But Nahi-su had a reason for not spreading it around. Her husband won't let her tell outsiders about their relationship. They had to divorce because of debts, and he wants to hide the fact that they live together from everyone in the office. The workday is in full swing. Someone called Mel, a young, beautiful girl, handed him a coffee. The cup had a sticker on it wishing a good day. Mel was pleasantly surprised. The girl walked away humming a little song to herself. During a smoke break, Mitchell's older coworker was telling him about Ari, how young and beautiful she was and how lucky he was that she liked him. They started making lewd jokes about young girls. Mitchell thought that she was really young and hot. The man told him to take advantage of the opportunity while he's young and handsome. Ari clearly has a crush on him. He asked if Mel was free. That's when Ari and her friend walked past them. Mel looked at the girl interestedly and replied that he is single. Later at home, Mel watched TV while Nahu put things in order. She asked how he was doing at work, which made the man angry, saying he was tired and that she shouldn't bother him. The girl replied that she was just worried about him. She hopes that when he gets a permanent place, They will be able to pay off their debts faster and get married again. Talking about marriage pissed him off. He told her to stop nagging him. He said that Nahu couldn't live a day without him, so she shouldn't push him. Suddenly the man remembered something and decided to appease her. He starts asking her for money for perfume. Does she want her man to smell bad now that he works in the office? When Nahu said that they can't afford to spend too much this month, Mel got angry and started saying that he deserves a nice, expensive perfume. He said she was just greedy, turned around, and went to rest. The next morning, Nahu was calculating how much Mel spent on himself to look decent. Coming to work, she understood that a young man wanted to look well-groomed, but no matter how much they worked and saved, they were still in a lot of debt to please him. She decided to take extra shifts at work. Nesu left him money for perfume. She'll have to work overtime for a while, but Mitchell will be happy. Then she went to work. Late at night, two young men were standing in an alley smoking. One of them was surprised at the sudden invitation to dinner. Normally, Bamthaha can't be dragged anywhere. The guy usually shies away from noisy places, but his friends are always happy to hang out. A guy asked if he could invite a couple of girls with him. Bam Taiho was fine with it. His friend thought it was strange. The guy never went to cheap eateries, much less called anyone for company. The young men finished their cigarettes and headed for the establishment. Boma looked happy and excited. It was a cheap diner that served beer and fried meat. A group of drunken men were discussing how a woman should behave so that her husband would not leave her. They said that a wife should be affectionate, not to cross her husband, and in everything to please. Then any man will try for her. Nesu thought at this moment that, despite her best efforts, she was only hearing reproaches from her husband. There was a time when he could be affectionate and attentive. She wondered if it was her fault, what their relationship had become, or time. Suddenly, a group of young men entered the establishment. Jizu wondered how many there would be among them. She recognized the handsome man from the flower store. She was so startled by his arrival that she was speechless. The guys were happy to all get together for dinner. The cute girl in the center said they needed a table for 4. Nisu led them to their table while the young people were studying the menu. Nahu came to her senses. She thought it was strange that this handsome man came to the place where she worked. Her friend's words about that handsome man being interested in Nahu came to mind, but she couldn't believe it, and she wasn't interested either. She was embarrassed that he had bought her breakfast, and now tried not to look in their direction. The girl sitting next to Bam Taiha tried to strike up a conversation with him, while Nahai Su was wondering if they were dating. The guy kept his eyes on her. The girl asked him who he kept looking at. His friend laughingly told Hiji that she wasn't Bum Tai's girlfriend, no need to bother him with questions. The girl didn't like the guy's remark. They started arguing. "Don't your meat is on fire?" The guy interrupted their argument. The guy calmed down and started eating. Hiji watched Bam Taiha and realized that he kept looking at their waitress. She asked if he knew her personally. The guy cracked a smile and said, "Yes." Hiji was jealous. How could such a handsome man be acquainted with an unattractive Amma? Nahu was cleaning up as usual when she noticed that her coat was torn. She thought Mitchell would be angry with her because she had just bought recently. McCall was having fun on his phone. He asked if Nahai Su was going to go to bed. McCall noticed that Nahai Su was going to sew. He snatched the item from her and accused her of pulling it out in front of him on purpose. He started yelling at her for dressing like an old woman, that this rag should be thrown away, that she was pathetic, and that no man would look at her. Nisu remembered again how the handsome man had bought her breakfast and realized that it was out of pity. Mel felt a little ashamed of himself for snapping at her. He pulled her to him and told her that even though no one wanted her, he was still with her. Nisu was sure at that moment that she only had him. She realized she was living a very unhappy life. The next morning, Nahu made Mel's breakfast as usual. Since rain was forecast for the day, she started looking for an umbrella. There was one whole umbrella. She checked the old umbrella. It was a little broken, but still worked. Jess left a whole umbrella for Macho so he wouldn't get wet on the way home. Ari, smiling, headed for the coffee. She knew she'd find Mitchell there. The girl tried to draw his attention to herself. She started looking for coffee on the top shelves. Suddenly, the girl screamed and clung tightly to MCH. Suddenly, the girl screamed and clung tightly to Mitchell. She said she saw a big bug and she was terrified. When Mitchell offered to chase him away, the bug was gone. Mel was pleasant around Ari. He felt courageous. Meanwhile, at the flower shop, Nahu friend was sighing and waiting for handsome Bam Taiha to appear. Finally, she saw him from outside the window. Nahu felt uncomfortable. She asked her friend to take care of the clients while she herself worked in the back room. The young man was surprised at how quickly Nahu ran away. He thought it was pretty interesting. The guy decided not to embarrass her further and placed order with her coworker. He didn't even look at her, hoping to see Nahi-Su. The workday is over. It was pouring rain outside, and the girls said goodbye. Nasu thought about how stupid she was for running away today. Tomorrow she would try to behave normally. Suddenly her umbrella literally fell apart. She tried to think of what she should do. She couldn't run home in such a heavy downpour, if only she had bought a new umbrella in time. But she always feels bad about spending extra money. If she called Mel, he would definitely get mad at her. She thought about waiting out the rain under the awning. Suddenly someone covered Nahu with an umbrella. When she looked up, she saw the handsome Bam Taha. "Where do you live?" the young man asked her. Nisu was embarrassed, thanked her for her concern, and said there was no need to help her out. She thought he'd turn around and walk away. But the guy didn't move. He kept his eyes on her. He really wanted to be with her for a while. "Let's take shelter under my umbrella together." Nesu was astonished. Heaven must be laughing at her and pushing her into the sky over and over again. The handsome guy stood looking confidently at the girl. Nesu decided it would be awkward to refuse him, so they went home under his umbrella. They stood at the stoplight in awkward silence, contrary to her expectations. The guy didn't try to make conversation. The sound of the rain made Nahisu feel comfortable walking with him under the same umbrella. Boma kept his eyes on the girl, careful not to let the raindrops hit her shoulder. The girl noticed that, despite his tall stature, the guy tried to walk slowly, adjusting to her pace. Nisu thought about the fact that with McCall she always had to run and walk behind him. Then she remembered that she had seen the handsome man with a girl at their diner. She asked if his girlfriend would mind him walking under the same umbrella with another woman, but BHA looked at her interestedly and asked why she thought he had a girlfriend. Nisu admitted that she remembers him having dinner with friends and a girl sitting next to him. The guy was amused. He said she was wrong. He doesn't have a girlfriend. He said it was just his friends. He moved closer to Nahu. "It's true, please believe me." Jess-Sue felt strange, said she believed him. Suddenly, a headlight came around the corner and a car horn honked. The guy grabbed the girl's shoulder and abruptly turned her around to face him. A passing car doused him from a puddle, while Nahai-Su remained completely clean and dry. The girl snuggled her face into his broad chest, feeling safe beside him. Boma apologized for scaring her. He was afraid the car would hit her. Nahu felt uncomfortable. She was pleased by the guy's concern. Suddenly, she realized they were standing tightly pressed against each other. He covered her completely with his body. "I'm big, right?" said the guy. Nesu stared at him. "I mean, my height. I'm tall. I covered you from getting splashed." Nahu looked at him in confusion. She thought that maybe he was interested in her, but why else would he behave like that with her? As they continued walking, the girl ventured to ask why he was so kind to her. She couldn't believe someone would behave like that without ulterior motives. "You found me out. I have my motives. I just want to get to know you." The guy smiled when Nahai-Su said it was impossible. The guy smiled condescendingly. He wondered why she didn't want to get to know him better. Hao replied that he's young and popular with young girls. He shouldn't waste his time on an alma like her. When they arrived at her house, she thanked him for his help. The guy asked if she was sure she didn't want to get to know him better. Nisu suggested that they remain strangers. There's no need to complicate things. Bamtaha promised to do as she asked. He wished her the best and went home. The girl stared back at him with a sense of bitterness. He was tall and sturdy, and deep in her heart she was hurt that he had backed down so easily, but a line had to be drawn between them. When Nahu returned home, she noticed that McCall had forgotten to bring an umbrella. She remembered the words of the men at the diner that a woman should take care of her man. The Sioux grabbed an umbrella and decided to head out to meet her husband from work. She hoped he would appreciate her concern. Finally, she approached his place of work. People were leaving the building one by one, but Mel did not appear. His phone was off and he didn't read her message. Jess thought he might have left by now. Suddenly, she saw him walking under the same umbrella with a pretty young girl. Nesu froze in place. She felt jealous. Finally, the couple noticed her. Mel was confused, and the girl looked suspiciously at Nahu. The man told Ari it was his family member who came to meet him because of the rain. Jess didn't like that Minchell introduced her simply as a relative. Mel said she shouldn't have come after him in this weather. He would have gotten there on his own. He waved goodbye to Ari and tried to get Nahu away quickly. He then proceeded to berate the girl. He wasn't happy that she came. He didn't want them to be seen together. When Nahu asked what kind of girl it was, the man got even angrier. He didn't like that she was interrogating him. She was just his co-worker who decided to help him out, Minkle said. She wouldn't understand since she has no friends or coworkers. A memory of a handsome guy wanting to get to know her better surfaced in Jesus' mind. She experienced a sense of guilt in front of McCall. The girls were very tired, so they got a very large order. They were sitting there, exhausted, when Jesus' coworker started complaining that her arm hurt. Nisu offered to work on her own while her friend rested for a while. Suddenly, a new client appeared in the doorway. The handsome man looked around the store. The girl was in anticipation. She hoped that today he would order from her and not Nahu. Nahu said hello and was about to ask if she would make him a bouquet as usual. To her surprise, no sooner had she finished speaking than the guy walked past her as if she hadn't even existed. The girl felt cold and shocked. "It's been 2 weeks, McCall. Started staying at work more often and even going out on weekends." Life went on as usual. Nahaisu continued to work. Bam, Taha no longer approached Nahu, pretending they didn't know each other, as she had requested. Jess was offended by his behavior even though she herself asked for it. She must have mistakenly thought that he was in love with her. Maybe it's for the best. If his feelings were true, it might hurt. Mitchell didn't respond to Nesu messages. She would fall asleep before he got home from work and leave while he was still asleep. Nesu served the table where the man was celebrating his divorce. He had already had a few too many drinks and was bragging about how well he was going to do now. Now he can hit on young girls. His friends congratulated him, there were dirty jokes at the table, and the company was having a good time. Suddenly the drunken man glared at Nahu. He thought to himself that she had an appetizing figure and a pretty face. Since he was a regular customer, she must have known he had his own business. He thought his attention would be flattering to her. He called Nahu very loudly and demanded that she pour him a drink and drink with him herself. The girl was a little frightened. She was not comfortable with this attitude. She politely declined. The man started yelling at her, threatening to complain and have their eatery shut down. The owner of the diner came running out, screaming as he was trying to figure out what was going on. Nearby, visitors began to defend Nahai Su, saying that the man was hitting on her. The drunk man shouted that he was a rich and regular customer, and that he had to be served the way he wanted to be served, or else he would stop coming to the place. The owner of the diner apologized and offered dinner at his expense. That wasn't enough for the scumbag. He told Nahai Su to kneel down and apologize. While the owner of the diner was arguing with the man, the girl knelt down and apologized for being rude. She didn't want her bosses to have problems because of her. The boss reached out to her, asking her not to do this because it wasn't her fault at all. After work, the boss scolded Nahai Su for giving in to this impudent person. He didn't want her to be humiliated because of him. He was worried about her because he knew she already had a hard life. There are a lot of people out there who can be hurtful. Jess-Soo was pleased by the boss's concern. She assured him that everything was fine, making sure their diner didn't lose a regular customer. She has worked hard and faced hardship since her youth. She gradually stopped taking such incidents to heart. The boss offered to give her a ride home, but it turned out that Nahai Su was leaving for her next job. The man was concerned. When does she rest? He didn't mean to be rude, but he asked if she really had that much debt. Nahu remembered the first time debt collectors came to them, trashed their apartment, and threatened their lives. She was broken. Mel tearfully promised that they would pay off the debt and live happily ever after. Again, she simply answered yes. Now she lives in fear of debt collectors every day. A drunken man was walking home and talking about how nice it was for him when the waitress knelt in front of him. He figured she'd be nicer next time. Now she knows not to piss him off and will do as she's told. In his drunken ramblings, he didn't realize someone was following him. From behind came the sound of footsteps. The man got his ass kicked, flopped to the ground, and yelled, "Who dared touch him?" The stranger grabbed him by the hair and lifted his head up. "Do you want to die?" came the voice of a stranger. He told the man to hit him first, and quickly the man got angry and started shouting that he would teach the guy a lesson. The man swung his hand and slapped the guy in the face. The young man rubbed his lip with pleasure. He asked the drunk man if he knew who he was. The man roared that he didn't know him. "Don't you?" "This is your chance to find out," the guy said, and blood spatter flew in different directions. This evening, Nasu was working a shift at a convenience store. Even though it was late at night, there was still plenty of work to do. She was tired, but she knew it wasn't usual for customers to be out this late. Her eyes closed from exhaustion and she dozed off. Suddenly, she woke up to a slight noise. She had already started to say hello when she realized she knew the man. It was the handsome guy from the flower shop. Nesu wondered if it was a coincidence that he was coming to the flower shop and the diner where she works, and now to the shop. Despite the awkwardness, there's no one to serve him but her. But her, The young man put only a packet of Band-Aids on the counter. Nisu looked up and saw the wounds on his face. She was worried about what had happened to him. The guy stood staring at her intently. His gaze was expressionless. Nesu looked at the horrible wounds on his face and wondered what kind of monster could have done this to him. She was genuinely upset, but she didn't know if she had the right to ask him what had happened, even though they had decided to remain strangers. Last time the girl couldn't just ignore him. "If you just put a bandage on without applying any medicine, it will get worse," the girl said. Bomb. Tayo was surprised that she spoke to him. The girl thought she might be minding not her own business. After all, they decided not to keep in touch. The young man broke out into a smile. He was pleased with her concern. Suddenly he leaned on the counter and loomed over the girl. His eyes were full of mischief. "Then what should I do? Please teach me." Nisu was embarrassed by the way he spoke to her, by how close he leaned to her. He looked at her again with interest and was surprisingly polite. Nisu decided to talk to him informally since she was older than him. She told him to follow her. BMT had decided if she was informal with him, it was a good sign he liked it. "Let's sit outside and I'll help you," the girl called him to follow her. The guy followed her as if on a leash. Nesu handed him a healing ointment, but the guy said he didn't know how to use it. The girl, Gredumed, said that she would do it herself. "Suck it up, even if it stings," she said, and began to treat the wounds. The boy shuddered. Nisu wondered if he was in a lot of pain. She was very worried about him. "It is a little ticklish," he said. He enjoyed her touch. Jess asked how old he was, but the guy only said he was an adult. "A grown kid is running around fighting," the girl inquired. BM said it wasn't his fault, it's just the way life is. There's not much joy in it, and he has problems at home. Those words echoed in Nahai Su's heart. She remembered herself as young and joyless. It seemed to her that their situations were similar. She couldn't ignore his words. She looked into his deep eyes and saw sadness. His words touched her, and she made a decision. "Last time you asked if we could be acquainted. Okay, let's get to know each other." He asked if he could call her Nuna, to which the girl flatly refused. Since she is older, he should address her as a Juma. The guy grinned contentedly. He was very happy that Nahu sympathized with him. He later thanked her and asked her to add him to her contact list. The evening turned out well. One evening, at a company party, a group of colleagues stayed late. Mel had lost track of what he'd drunk. He didn't feel like going back to their shabby apartment. The boss kept pouring Ari drinks even though she was already drunk. She looked into her glass and did not understand what she was drinking, but it was indecent to refuse the boss. Suddenly, Mel discreetly swapped her glass for a glass of water. Ari didn't expect this. She was grateful to him. Colleagues drank and chatted happily. They started asking Mel, "What type of women do you dislike?" He said he can't stand Jumas, who are perpetually tired and neglected. He likes young girls who wear nice lingerie and take care of themselves. Mel immediately thought of the unattractive Na Hao. To be honest, it was her type that annoyed him. Colleagues started teasing him. He described the image of the Alma in such detail, as if he was living with one of them. "Maybe that's the kind of girl he'd really like," Mel snorted, saying that he prefers beautiful, well-groomed, and young girls. This conversation began to irritate him. Ari listened to their conversation and realized she was quite his type. She liked Mel. She would like him to pay attention to her. Nesu stood staring at her phone. Earlier, she and Boma had exchanged contacts, and she decided that she would try to get to know him better. He immediately started texting her. She thought he had an unusual name. At the same time, Mitchell did not answer her. The girl decided not to distract him because he was working so hard and was having a hard time right now. McCall decided Ed to walk Ari home as they got very drunk. The girl, barely on her feet, said there was no way she could make it on her own. Suddenly, Ari clung to McCall and started saying that he was not like all the men around. Embarrassed, the girl confessed that she had liked Minkle for a long time. She reached for him and offered to go to her house. Mel didn't reped to Nahu, so he must have gotten home late and gone straight to sleep. That's what she thought, but Mitchell was actually spending time with Ari. Nesu worked the night shift and was heading home. She was very tired and hadn't even sat down to rest all night. She wanted to go to bed as soon as possible. The girl walked quietly into the house so as not to wake up Mitchell. Suddenly she froze. Mitchell wasn't home at that time. The man was sleeping sweetly in the arms of his young mistress. Later that morning, Mitchell called Nahi Su to say that the corporate party had gone on too long and he was spending the night at a nearby bathhouse. He was annoyed that she was worried. He said he was going straight to work and hung up the phone. Nahu felt guilty for making a scene. She believed her husband's words and didn't even realize that he could lie to her. Mitchell, hugging Ari and happy with the night, went to work without hesitation. A lonely guy was going about his business and looking under his feet when suddenly someone appeared in front of him and called his name. The boy recognized Bam Taiha and said hello. He wondered what he wanted from him since they hadn't talked to each other in years. The guy was surprised that he remembered him. They had gone to school together, but Bam Taiha was popular in school and always sat in the back, while Jimu was the nerd and sat in the first desk. Despite this, Bam Ta had a good reputation. He was not a bully, so Jimu was friendly and asked what he could do for him. Bam Tayo smiled and asked him to switch shoes in a rather friendly manner. Jimu was surprised. His cheap sneakers didn't compare to Boma's expensive sneakers. He wondered if he was joking with him, but finally he said yes. The boys exchanged shoes, and Jimu thought it was a favorable exchange for him. Boma thanked the acquaintance, and the guy went on about his business. Bam Taha sat alone and listened to music when suddenly Hiji came over to him and asked him what he was listening to. He let her listen. It was an old band's love song to Alma. Hiji was surprised. No one listens to that kind of stuff anymore. Boma looked happy and said he liked it. The girl turned her attention to the guy's shoes. She thought it was strange that he was wearing such old, cheap sneakers. She asked what was wrong with his shoes, to which the guy cheerfully replied that he liked them like that. At this time, their friends were passing by. They were jealous that all the girls were always hitting on Bam Taiha. Donik said the girls like his face, that's all. His friends started teasing him about Bam Taiha stealing Hiji away from him. He noticed that Hiji was interested in BMHA. Jealousy and anger read in Don's eyes. The girls sat waiting for customers. Nesu's co-worker was saying that she must have been mistaken, that the handsome man liked her, because lately he didn't want Nisu to serve him. She sighed dreamily and wondered if this handsome guy would come to her for a bouquet today. Jizu remembered last night, but she decided not to tell her friend. At that time, a familiar pretty face appeared in the doorway of the store. Bam Taiha immediately looked at Nahai Su with a confident gait. The man walked right up to her counter. Naiu's colleague was shocked. Who dared to disfigure such a beautiful face? "I'm here to buy flowers," Bam Taha said, pulling himself closer to the girl with a slight smile. Nasu was embarrassed. He was too close. She asked what kind of flowers he wanted to buy. "You know what? I'm going to order. We know each other now," the guy said playfully. Nesu started picking a bouquet of roses. A guy stood next to her and watched her. The girl observed a strange picture. The handsome man was joking ambiguously with Nahu, asking if she would make a discount for her good acquaintance. From the outside, it looked like the two were flirting. Suddenly, Bam Taiha asked if Nahai Su was free after work. The girl was embarrassed. She asked if Bam Tai wanted her to scold him. I do want to be scolded," the guy thought to himself and smiled contentedly. Nahu finished her work at the flower store. Bam Taiha was waiting for her at the entrance. The girl had her next job waiting so she could spend time with him. The guy said he remembered that she worked at the meat counter. He offered to walk her to work. Bam Taiha joked that they just met and she doesn't have time for him anymore. He was upset that she was working so hard. He said being an adult was boring. Jizu was noticed that the guy, although young, is very tall and broad. Boma noticed that the girl was considering him and asked what she was thinking about. Jess replied that the guy was very tall, so she thought about his height. The young man smiled and said she was good at it. He was even jealous. Niso was surprised. What was there to be jealous of, since she was shorter than him? The guy smiled indulgently. He thought to himself, how honest and naive she was. He said it would be his pleasure to walk her to work. Nahu didn't mind. Nahu turned her attention to his worn sneakers. Even though they're old, they look good on him. The girl asked why he buys flowers every day, instead of buying more practical things. Bumtia looked at her thoughtfully and replied that there was little joy in life, so why not make yourself feel good? Nahu was touched by his words. They were said so quietly and heartily. She thought about how there was little joy in her life either. This guy turned out to be very wise. She felt ashamed that at first she had condemned his actions. She had spent so much time picking bouquets for other people that she didn't even think flowers could make her happy. She thanked Bam Taiha for keeping her company. "If you're grateful, then let's see each other often in the future." The boy smiled sincerely at her. The lunch break had started in the office, and Ari was looking for McCall. Suddenly, she heard one of her co-workers discussing her with McCall. The man told Mel about Ari being seemingly arrogant. He said that all women get mercurial as they get older. so he should take advantage of them while they're young. AR listened. She wondered what Mitchell would say, but he didn't say anything, and then the man continued to ask him if they had had anything yet. This kind of talk was not to Mitchell's liking. He decided to teach that jerk a lesson. He said the man had been with the company for quite some time, but had never attained a high position. Instead of wasting his time talking, he should be doing his job. Mitchell walked right up to him and told him to finish cracking up. He looked like an idiot. Then he turned around and walked away. Mel was standing on a flight of stairs. A coworker had angered him with his talk. Ari suddenly appeared and wrapped her arms around him. She heard their conversation, afraid that Mitchell was just playing with her feelings. But it turned out he was a good guy. The girl was afraid that after a night together, he would forget about her. But she was wrong. Ari was very happy. She decided she would never let him go. A carefully prepared dinner was waiting for Mel at home. The man at this time was having a carefree dinner in the company of his mistress and had no intention of returning home. Nesu worked the night shift at the motel today. She received encouraging texts from Boma. He showed attention and care towards her. Hisu was very pleasant, she thought. He was young and romantic. Bom Taha was directly across the street from her work at this time. That guy had his own secrets. A very drunk man entered the lobby. He was barely dragging his feet. The man asked for a number and then started demanding that some girl be called to have some fun. Nesu politely asked for his card to pay for the room. The drunk handed her the driver's license and began to hustle. The girl didn't know how to talk to him, so as not to cause problems. Suddenly another man appeared in the lobby. He asked if there were any rooms available. The man handed her a card and told her he was buying out all available rooms for that night. Nisu was shocked. This had never happened before. Bom Taiha stood sheltered in the shadows. He checked his phone and got a message saying, "Problem solved." The drunk was walking and cursing that he couldn't get a motel room. Bom Taiha was pleased with himself. The motel manager was amazed that all the rooms were booked. She was happy to let Nasu go home. The girl was overjoyed. She thought that luck had smiled on her. In a good mood, she walked home and was glad that she would be able to get a good night's sleep tonight. When she got home, her heart sank. The food left for Mitchell was untouched and he himself was not at home. Nahu continued to receive caring texts from Boma. He showed attention, worried about her, wished her a good day throughout the day. He texted her periodically. Nahai-su thought it was because he was still very young. She enjoyed his attention and felt better every time he wrote to her. Regardless, she never once answered him. She just didn't know what to write to him. Bom Taiha smiled enigmatically and thought to himself, how to get her to answer him? Donik asked why his friend was always smiling and looking at his phone. "She's ignoring me," replied the guy, smiling. The guy wondered what kind of girl could ignore Boma. He was even more surprised that his friend was texting a girl. Nisu was standing at the stove as usual, cooking Mel's favorite dish. He was in good spirits after his meetings with Ari. Suddenly he felt like saying something nice to Nahai-su. The girl blew on her spoon and gave him a taste of the dish. He said, "She cooks so good. Her food is to die for." Mel didn't feel guilty about cheating. He just felt sorry for her. Today he thought that cheating was even good for a long-term relationship. He thanked Nahai-su for the money she gave him for the perfume. Suddenly an idea popped into his head. Mel thought to himself that her figure was more appetizing than AR's. He got excited. He bit her ear and whispered that it had been a while since they'd spent time with each other. The man began to caress her and bite down on her neck. The girl asked to be let go because she was late for work. Mel let the girl go. Jisoo worried if he was offended. The man assured her that it was fine. McCall didn't expect anything else from her. He lay down and started texting Ari. He enjoyed their relaxed conversation. Ari suggested they get together. He was thinking of going with her and picking out his perfume. He remembered how they usually went shopping with Nahu. She always chooses the most unattractive and cheapest clothes. Mitchell noticed that she glances at beautiful things, her eyes always full of regret at that moment. But every time he asked if she liked something or offered to buy it, she refused. She always felt bad about spending money on herself. It pissed the man off. He decided to go with Ari because Nisu doesn't know how to shop and is boring with her. Bom Taha met his subordinate in a dark alley. The young man gathered information about Nahai-su's husband. He made sure that such a bastard didn't belong with her. He held up a lighter, and the fire began to consume the photo. His eyes were full of grim pleasure. The guy was determined to act. Nesu's shift at the motel was coming to an end. Her eyes were closing from exhaustion. But she had a shift at the meat diner ahead of her. Suddenly there was a text message from Boma. He wanted to see her for a little while after work. The girl didn't mind. She was happy to spend time with him. Bom Taiha stood at the entrance to the motel waiting for Nahu. The girl came out and stared at him. Bom Taiha looked so handsome and confident. She complimented him. She thought to herself that he was actually more mature than she had originally thought he was. Nisu said she didn't have much time because she was in a hurry to go to another job. Bom Tia was happy to have a short meeting and then said he would see her off. The young man said that this alley was very dark and dangerous. She must be scared to walk here alone, but the girl assured him that she was not scared. "I'm scared." The guy tried to flirt with her and gave her a sly smile. "You're so big? It's like you're a barrier, a walking barrier." Nesu stared at him. The boy laughed hardly. "Then, shall I walk behind you like this?" Boma stood by behind her, so tall, and smiled. Jess threw back her head and their eyes met. It was nice to feel secure around him. The girl side told him to go and keep quiet. Bom Taiha slowed his step and looked closely at the girl's figure. She looked so fragile and delicate. He wanted to protect her. His gaze fell to the back of her head and became icy cold. The guy saw the bite mark on her neck. Jealousy boiled up in him, and he reached out a hand to the girl. He pulled Nahu to him and leaned over her. Nahu asked, "What happened?" In a low voice, Bom Taiha said that she must have been bitten by an insect. The young man gently wrapped his fingers around her neck and stared at the bite site. Nisu was surprised. Insects were rare at this time of year, and she didn't feel any discomfort either. "It definitely made the insect," the guy said a little strangely. Nesu couldn't understand where the bite on her neck could have come from. Suddenly the girl remembered what had happened since morning, and that Mel might have left this trace. The girl felt ashamed that Bom Taiha had seen this. She blushed. "Yes, I think it was a bug. I think I got bitten by a bug." The girl tried to cover her neck with her hand. "I knew it," Boma breathed out into her ear. He ran his finger gently over the bite site. Jealousy and anger fought in him, but he decided to pretend he believed the girl didn't want to embarrass her. Bom Taiha said he had to put a band-aid on the wound to heal it and started rummaging through his pockets. Nahaisu exhaled, thinking the guy believed her. The guy very gently and with care put the band-aid on and smoothed it out a bit. Jess felt a strange emotion. She was embarrassed. Suddenly he asked, why the girl wasn't responding to his texts. "I'll get sad if you don't reply." There was sadness in his words. Nahu had never received a text like this before. She wasn't cared for, so she didn't know what to reply to him or if she should. Then she remembered how sad she was when Mitchell didn't reply to her texts, and she realized how Boma felt. She experienced intense feelings of guilt and apologized. She had never communicated like that with anyone. She did not want to offend him, said he must be bored with her. The girl wanted to socialize with him, for she had no friends. She was happy to know that someone was interested in her. Bom Taiha fixed her collar. He said she didn't have to apologize because he wanted to write to her and insisted on communicating with her. "I was just throwing a tantrum like a little kid," the guy leaned in and said. He asked her not to apologize or try to please anyone to her own detriment. "Na Jess Sue, do as you wish," he said fondly. The girl heard such a phrase for the first time in her life. It was the first time someone had told her to do what she wanted to do. Nisu was in a good mood. She asked her boss if she could buy one flower for herself. The boss offered to pick up the flower for free because Nahu was working hard, but the woman insisted that she would pay for it. She decided to give herself a gift and was very happy with it. It was the first time a girl had ever let herself buy something for her own pleasure. She decided to come home before her next job to put a flower in a vase so it wouldn't wilt. She poured water into a small vial and placed the rose in it. There was joy in the girl's soul. Nahai Su decided to share this event with Bom Taiha. She took a picture of the rose and sent him a message. At this time, Macho decided to stop by the house for a little while, too. He was surprised. He asked why she was at home and not at work. The girl replied that she had come in for a short while and was leaving soon. Nesu thought he was already back, but Mitchell said he would quickly change his clothes and go to work over time. Suddenly the man noticed the rose and asked where it came from. Jisoo replied that she had bought one rose just to please herself. Something came over him. He felt so sorry for Nahai Su. He wanted to caress her just because she looked so pitiful. Suddenly he realized that the thought of fooling two women tickled his nerves, and he decided to caress Nisu. He wanted to do it quickly and leave to meet Ari, but suddenly the girl protested and said that she was going through a dangerous period. When he heard that, he got angry and grabbed her chin and growled disappointedly that she would never get pregnant anyway. He said she screwed up as usual, got up, and left. The girl was left lying on the floor in torn feelings. Bita stood and looked at the message from Nahu. He was very happy that she had texted him. Suddenly some girls he knew approached him. They didn't believe it was him at first. It was a poor neighborhood, what would he do here? The girls said. It was a big coincidence that they met in such a place. Bomtha smirked. He didn't believe in coincidences. Behind every seemingly plausible coincidences there are hundreds of inevitabilities. Some inevitabilities are intertwined one after another for that one coincidence that will reach you. The guy smiled and replied that there were no accidents. Nahu was folding clothes when she came across Mino's shirt. The girl noticed a lipstick imprint on his collar. Her head rumbled. Her heart began to beat desperately. Mitchell was waiting for Ari in the parking lot. The girl smiled when she saw him. She asked where they would go this evening. But Mitchell was angry after the incident with Nahai Su and didn't answer anything. The man swung open the car door and tore the girl toward him. Still angry after the incident with Nahu, he took advantage of AR's ability, who, unlike his wife, didn't refuse him. Nesu was distracted after discovering lipstick on her husband's shirt. She couldn't get over it. Everything fell out of hand. Suddenly the girl dropped the glass and it shattered into small pieces. The thought of a lipstick mark had been on her mind since she had never used makeup herself. She didn't rule out the possibility that it could be a misunderstanding. She tried to convince herself that she was making it up. The girl was afraid that her suspicions were unfounded and that she would upset Mitchell, and although she held back unshed tears, she decided not to worry and hoped that everything would be fine. By an unfortunate coincidence, Nahai Su witnessed a client's telephone conversation. She supported her friend whose husband cheated on her. From the conversation, she realized that her husband cheated on her because they had not been able to have a child for a long time. Usually at work, Nisu was distracted from thinking about her life, but today everything reminded her of the worst of times. The girl remembered what had been the last straw for her, the hardest loss of her life. Every time she had a hard time, she tried to think of the good things, the best things ahead. But right now, she wasn't sure of anything, didn't know what was going on between her and Mitchell. Boma rode his bike up to the store where Nahai Su worked. He saw her through the window, sitting with her head bowed and upset about something. The guy thought about the fact that the more he tried to distance himself from her, the more he was drawn to her with destructive force. Without removing his helmet, he walked straight toward her with a confident gait. Nesu was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't immediately notice the customer. The girl thought he was weird. He came in silent and didn't buy anything. Then she noticed his tall stature. A thought flashed through her mind that he looked like someone else. Suddenly, the guy held out her phone with a message on the screen and finally everything fell into place. Bom Taiha was flirting with her again. Nisu sighed. At least it wasn't a strange stranger. Do you want to be scolded? Bom Taiha opened his helmet, a chuckle read in his eyes. Jisoo asked why he was wearing a helmet, and the guy took it off. He said he came to see her from work. The girl assumed he worked in delivery, and Bom Taiha didn't deny it. She said he should be careful on the roads. Are you worried? He said with a smirk. Nahu calmly motioned for him to stand up and raise his helmet above his head as punishment for his jokes. She was just kidding, but the guy actually complied. The girl was speechless. Bom Taiha stood there and smirked. Even in this situation, he looked very attractive. Nesu asked why he came, and the guy said he hadn't had dinner yet. He wanted to buy something. The girl was worried that he was hungry, reprimanded him, and said that he should change his job if he didn't have time to eat at this one. BMTia was amused by her concern. He was pleased. The guy remembered what he was doing that night, thought about watching her bastard husband with his mistress, and was disgusted to realize that this man was next to Nahai Su, but he was patient. Suddenly, the guy stood up close to Nahai Su and said he couldn't quit because he was doing a very important job. The girl remembered that he mentioned problems at home. She believed that he had to work hard and, given his large frame, he also needed to eat well. She said she would treat him to dinner tonight. Nesu told him to pick what he liked, and she'd give him a treat. The guy didn't expect her to do that. All I'll take from you is your heart. I can afford to buy a meal, said Boma. The guy stretched out his arm and rested it against the shelving unit. He asked Nahu to just help pick out the most delicious things they have in the store. The girl was embarrassed. She thought he was joking. Like that again, she felt his back. He was big and strong. His presence excited her. Nahu's gaze fell on his wrist. She saw the beginning of the sentence in the form of a tattoo. Nisu turned to Boma and asked, "What is it on your wrist?" The guy looked at her for a moment. He thought maybe she didn't like tattoos. Maybe she thought they made him look like a thug. He rolled up his sleeve so she could see. "Do you hate it? Then I'll erase it," said Boma confidently. Nisu grabbed his hand in a soothing gesture, her voice trembling. Tell me, why do you have a scar like this? She raised her eyes full of alarm at him. Boma was surprised by how worried she was about him. With what trepidation she squeezed his. For a second, he remembered how the wounds bled under the black ink. Nesu thought about this young man's life, how many hardships he had to endure, whether he had done this to himself. She wanted to know what was behind his sad eyes. Boma realized everything from her face full of sadness. He was pleased that she sympathized with him, and it was funny. He felt a kind of pleasure in her expression, so he thought about teasing her some more. The guy gently ran his hand over her arm and said, The scars were from the accident. Nisu was surprised by his answer and looked at him anxiously. She reacted exactly as he thought she would. Boma was pleased with himself. She is naive, and he likes it. He said it wasn't worth her trouble. The guy started picking out food. Jess thought that he had lied to her very skillfully, but since the scars were old, she decided not to press him with questions for now. The girl helped the guy choose a delicious meal, saying, Since I am treating you, you should trust me. Nisu set the guy down to eat dinner and went back to the counter herself. Bom Taiha shone a smile. He was pleased that the girl cared about him. He tried to be at ease with her. Nahu was confused as usual. She thought that this guy gave her conflicting feelings, but she definitely liked him. She liked that she could temporarily escape from her DRB life and problems with Mel. Bom Taiha seemed like a strange guy to her, covered in scars and wounds with a suspicious job. Everything about him seemed strange and tempting at the same time. Mel and Ari were lying around talking. The girl laid her head on the man's chest and suddenly confessed that she wanted to marry him. McCall instantly tensed up. Ari pouted and asked, Why did you react that way? She said that she hadn't thought about marriage before she met him. McCall was tensed by such talk. He tried to joke that the girl was still too young to think about marriage. Ari jumped up and started to get indignant. She said that Mel was old enough to think about getting married, and since she was his girlfriend, it was okay. The resentment in her voice was palpable. Mel pulled the girl to him and continued to convince her that she was still too young. He said that all young girls are in a hurry to get married. Isn't it silly to waste your youth on one man? While Ari looked at him with resentment and incomprehension, the man continued to convince her that it was too early for them to think about marriage. Mel thought about almost getting caught. He thought they were just having fun, but he didn't think she'd take their relationship so seriously. He thought that the girl must be from a well-to-do family, judging by where and how she lived. Ari, dressed well, has her own car, is well-groomed, and most likely grew up in a loving family. Mel thought she was the opposite of Nisu, and he liked it. The girl didn't stop and asked the man, How do you see your family when you get married? Mitchell thought about it and replied that he wanted a cozy apartment, a car that could accommodate the whole family, and one child. Ari was touched by his revelation. She asked if he really wanted kids. The man recalled an unpleasant moment from the past when he had a chance to have it all. He was saddened when he found out that Nahai Su was so weak that she couldn't have children, but now he's glad the circumstances are the way they are. A child is a great luxury for them. He told Ari that it's expensive and hard to raise a child, so he's not ready for that yet. Ari could hear the notes of bitterness in his voice. She wanted to support Mel in some way. She clung to him tighter and told him that his dream would definitely come true. The couple continued to lie there, each thinking about his own thoughts. Night shrouded the city. A lone figure stood on the roof of a skyscraper and stared into the distance. Bom Taiha stood on the roof and recalled a conversation with his subordinate. They were sitting in the passenger compartment of an expensive car. Bom Taiha held out his wrist to the man and asked, What do you see? The man assumed a Buddhist saying was tattooed on his wrist. Boma smirked. He was once again admiring Nisu. How can that be? How can anyone notice the white scars beneath the black ink? Before seeing the ink, first he pondered. The man stood there thinking how amazing she was. He stood and thought about how he wished he could wait for her relationship to end like an adult. But of course it won't be like that. He realized he was too impatient, and even though she'd done nothing, he'd already lost his freedom. The source of all suffering is attachment. Taiha took a deep breath and realized that his suffering had already begun. The attachment overwhelmed him. He couldn't and wouldn't resist it. Nisu was late returning home as usual and was absorbed in her thoughts. Suddenly, she recognized the man walking towards her. It was the drunk man who had been harassing her at their diner. The girl tensed up, thinking he was about to start hitting on her again. To her surprise, the man saw her and froze in horror. He turned and ran down the first alley without saying a word to her. Nisu was surprised, not realizing that it was just now, but she was glad that she could get home safely. When she got home, Mel was already asleep. She undressed quietly and lay down to rest too. The girl was surprised that her husband fell asleep so early. She thought that he really worked hard and was tired. She was worried that he was overworked. Suddenly, Mitchell's phone began to vibrate. The girl's name lit up on the display. Nisu's heart skipped a beat. Fear and anxiety gripped her. Nisu had been at a loss all day. She wondered if she should have answered that call to find out what that young girl wanted from Mitchell. A sense of jealousy demanded that she ask her if she and Mel were really just co-workers at work. The man slept soundly while Nahu went over all the questions she wanted to ask this girl in her head. She never decided to answer, and the call stopped. The girl was afraid that she would not be able to bear the answer. She consoled herself with the thought that this girl was calling him on work matters. At work, a co-worker started showing her pictures from her friend's wedding. The girl was very excited. It was the first time she had been to a wedding, and she was very happy about it. She told her how she dreamed of one day meeting a nice man and wearing a white dress. The girl remembered that Nahai Su was also married and started asking her if she had a hard time planning the wedding, what kind of dress she had, and where they spent their honeymoon. Jess had nothing to reply to. All these questions made her plunge into her memories. She and Mitchell just filed the papers. There was no grand ceremony. They were both surprised at how quickly it was processed. Having registered the marriage, the couple left the building as if nothing had happened. Mitchell suggested going to a diner and eating meat. Despite the man wanting to lighten the mood, Nahai Su tried to object. They needed to save money, but eventually agreed. Mitchell hugged the girl tightly and said that in a year's time, they would definitely hold a lavish marriage ceremony. He promised that she would wear a beautiful wedding dress, that they would give each other diamond rings, and be sure to go on a honeymoon to Hawaii. Nesu listened to him and believed him. She believed every word he said. The man kept telling her how good they would live, and that everything would be perfect for them. The girl continued to blush and believe, and Mel teased her that she was blushing. Though Mel didn't keep any of his promises, they both laughed and were happy that day. That day shone brighter than any diamond. Cars drove down the road one after another. Byamtai had checked his phone again and again. She stopped responding to his messages again. He really wanted to get close to Nahai Su, thinking about how he could do it. If I had known it would turn out this way, maybe I should have taken a few more hits that day, he thought. Suddenly, a lighted lighter was brought to his face. His new bodyguard suggested he light a cigarette. Boma stared at him intently. He was unhappy that he had been pulled out of his thoughts. He said it wasn't necessary and showed that it was just candy. The bodyguard faltered. He apologized, said he'd like to give him a light if he smoked. Boma handed him a lollipop and said that if he wanted it so badly, he could light his candy. He said he hadn't seen him before. The man replied that today was his first day. Bomtaiha asked with an impenetrable gaze if he had ever buried a person before. The young man was thinking about what he should do since the girl doesn't answer him, and what he would like to do with her loser husband. The newly minted bodyguard didn't know what to say. He said he'd never had to do this before. The man said if his master took care of him and paid him well, he would try to do whatever he was told. Bomtaya handed him a lighter and told him to relax. He was just kidding. The man stood there and didn't know what to think. He couldn't tell from the look on his new master's face whether he was joking or not. He asked the second bodyguard, to which his colleague replied with a shrug. Bom Taiha stood on the bridge and continued to think about this. At this time, his new subordinate was thinking that anything could be expected of him. Bom Taiha looked just like his father, the chairman, and it was even scary. Nahu witnessed a conversation between two friends. One of them was complaining that her husband was having an affair at work. While she was working several jobs and counting every penny, her husband was spending money on a mistress. Everything was falling apart. Memories of Mitchell's strange behavior resurfaced in her mind. Jisoo had doubts. What if Mel really cheated on her? She panicked, thinking what would happen to her if it was true. Growing anxiety squeezed her heart. The girl found it hard to breathe. A passing supervisor noticed that she wasn't feeling well and asked her what was wrong. The girl replied that she was not feeling well. Nahu gasped and asked to leave work early. The boss immediately agreed to let her go, saying he was worried about her, so let she rest. The man asked if she needed to go to the hospital, but Jess said she would rest and it would go away. She thanked him and headed out. The girl ran down the street without remembering herself. Her head was buzzing. Her legs carried her on their own. Tears covered her eyes. And it was at that moment that a gentle, familiar voice sounded in her head, the voice of the man who had once told her that she should do what she wanted. That calm voice made the ever-submissive Nesu find herself at Mel's work. Once inside, the girl began to hesitate. Mitchell had said he would work at night, but she had never been here before and didn't know where to find him. Suddenly, a guard called out to her. The man said no outsiders were allowed in here, asked her what she wanted. Nahu knew that Mincho hid their relationship from others. She said that she was his relative and she urgently needed him. The guard thought for a moment and said that he didn't remember Mitchell staying at work that night. En's eyes darkened, and for a second she thought she would lose consciousness. But suddenly the guard offered to escort her and help her find him. The man led the girl to the right department and loudly asked if Mel was there, saying he had a visitor. Nisu clutched the strap of her bag tightly, her eyes darting around the office looking for her husband.